Howdy folks, Spencer here, and today I'll be going over the build and strategies that I used for the solo Gravity Kills Elite run that I published yesterday. As always, chapters are listed down below. Before I get too far into things, I do want to quickly show you guys how to start up a solo Gravity Kills Elite if you're wanting to attempt it yourself. So if you're on PC, you would open up the TFO window, and you would go to the private tab, scroll down to Gravity Kills, hit the drop down so you can set it to elite difficulty, and then hit the start private task force operation button. If you're over on a console, I don't know what the setup is like over there. I don't know if you can even do this stuff solo over there, but if you're on PC, you can do Gravity Kills Elite and many other queues in the game on your own or with a team of less than 5 players by going over to that private tab. And heading over to the strategy side of things, I find whenever I'm doing a solo TFO like this, it is a good idea to have a quick little write-up to go over what the requirements of the TFO are, some important notes for fighting the foe in that TFO, and of course a breakdown of what each phase is like in the TFO so that I know what needs to be done at each part of the run. So for Gravity Kills Elite here, I would say that there's basically 5 phases. You could also say it's just 3, but I think breaking each of the stations you have to get particles from into a different phase is probably not a bad idea, especially when you consider that the enemies that spawn in around the Jupiter do change at each phase. During the alpha phase, you don't have to really worry about them too much. During the beta phase, they start to do a little bit of damage, so you need to drop some heals or taunt abilities on the Jupiter to keep its health as high as possible and get some of the threat drawn away from the Jupiter itself. And then for the 4th phase, which is the Gamma Station, the Jupiter is basically sitting right on a spawn point for some enemies, and they will deal quite a bit of damage to it. So you want to have a console like the Protomatter Field Projector off of the Lucari Hokun, I think it is. It's whatever Lucari ship is available in the Epic Phoenix store. But basically use that console to get the Jupiter back up to 100% as needed. If the Jupiter dies, then you can't deposit particles to it, which means you can't complete the TFOs. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. You also have only 15 minutes from the start of the TFO to actually go in and complete the entire thing. Any ability or weapon activations you do will cancel the particle pickup or deposit interaction. So turning your weapons off auto fire is very important, and that's why you saw me do that in the run. And for the final phase, the Zenkethi Zentar is the only ship you need to focus on. As soon as the Dreadnought is dead, the map is automatically completed. So those are some of the requirements and things to pay attention to. And for the Zenkethi, the traditional logic when fighting them is to not let them group up. The Zenkethi are designed to be more resilient, and in some cases, they're practically immune when you have a bunch of them grouped together in a gravity well or through a crowd control ability like Graviton Displacer. However, as Distant Knight recently pointed out to me, you can use the Tachyon Net Drones console from the C-Store Bozeman Intel Heavy Frigate to completely nullify that effect and make it so that you can group them up and easily take them out. So let me go over the phases in a bit more detail. And for that Bozeman Intel Heavy Frigate, I'll tell you right now, the console and starship trait from it played a crucial role in this run. This is a $30 C-Store ship. If you don't have it already, you should really pick it up. It's useful in more than just this type of environment. The ship itself is really good, especially with the isomags. The starship trait has some useful applications for situations in which you need speed, and the console has just a huge amount of benefit in a variety of TFOs. So overall good package, and I utilized many aspects of it for this run. So if you have one of the T6 coupons from the repack that they just had in the C-Store, definitely a ship that I would make sure you have on your account. Okay, so going back to the strategy here, for phase 1, you have a group of enemies at the start of the run that you need to take out. So Buffing up as the mission briefing timer goes down is good. I'd say at about 5 to 10 seconds left on the timer, you should have most of your buffs activated so that you can go in and just take them out immediately. You see I'm using the Tachyon Net Drones console, and that'll create that big net that you see around them. And then I'm using the Graviton Displacer console, which I think is off of the C-Store Shran. There's a KDF ship that has it also, but I'm using that to group them together, and because they're in the Tachyon Net Drones effect there, they are not getting that resilience that they would traditionally have from being grouped up. So in total, it took just a couple seconds to go through and take them all out. And as soon as they're gone, I'm over working on phase 2, which is the Alpha Station. As I was heading over to the Alpha Station there, you see that I right-clicked on my weapons to turn auto fire off. So you'll see I move the mouse over and I'm right-clicking to turn auto fire off there. I'm getting over there to the particles as fast as possible. For this Alpha Station, like I was saying, the enemies attacking the Jupiter don't really do much damage at this point. You could fire a torp spread as you feel, as you feel that is needed, but for the most part, just focus on running back and forth. And I'll go over all the speed boost I was using in the build portion of the video here, but really just keep running back and forth. Do that 10 times, and you'll be able to shoot the anchors or whatever that are holding the station in place, and then you can move on to the next phase. So there I am shooting the gravitic anchors. I'm dropping a torp spread into them, and you can see that torp spread there from the Maelstrom just basically annihilated them. As soon as that Alpha one is down, I'm already in position on Beta there so that I can get a particle as soon as possible. When Beta first becomes available for you to collect particles on, you want to make sure to grab them as fast as possible, get them over to the Jupiter. The enemies at this part of the run will start to damage the Jupiter a bit more, but they're going to take a little bit of time to get over towards the Jupiter. So if you are really fast, you can get a few particles done while the Jupiter is still at really high HP. And just to try and keep the Jupiter as high as possible health-wise, I did also drop a biomolecular shield bubble on it and a deploy sensor platform there just to draw some threat away from it. And because I'll need those again later on in the run, getting them off this early means that I'll have them up again sooner when I'm at like the gamma phase. So same thing here, just use whatever I can to get back and forth as fast as possible. And I get to the gamma phase here around 8.5 minutes in. Again, like with the beta, as soon as the beta one is going in, I'm heading over towards gamma so I can get to it as soon as possible. Unfortunately, in this case, the Jupiter's already going to be under a bit of heat. You can take a minute to try and get them to a side of the Jupiter that still has shield facing up, the shield facing up a little bit more. Maybe try to take a couple of them out, but ultimately they are going to just respawn in. And I did try to use the Sensor Phantom Projector console from the Cyclone, but the issue with the Sensor Phantom Projector is that it only works when you're right there and you're keeping the enemy in your forward arc. As soon as you turn away from it, the Sensor Phantom Projector just immediately turns off. So using that as a taunt just does not really work in this environment to protect the Jupiter. But it is still handy for the first phase and the final boss fight. So same thing here as the others, just, back and forth, bring the particles over as fast as possible. And you're going to see I'm going to hit the protomatter field projector on the Jupiter. And you can see the Jupiter's HP here shoot up from that console. Basically, I stayed around it until it was back up at like 100% HP. That gives me more time then to just focus on collecting the particles instead of worrying about, it potentially dying. So as you saw, it's back up at 100, and I have like 5 particles left that need to be collected. So just the same, just keep going back and forth as fast as you can. The slower you are at collecting the particles, the more that you'll have to sit by the Jupiter and heal it back up. So just keep that in mind. And these particles do like to fall in towards the black hole there. If you get too close, it'll suck you in. But I had enough maneuverability on this ship that I was able to escape it, even when I got a little bit too close and it popped up that warning saying to warp out. So I'm on the last particle here. Now for the gravitic anchors on the gamma one here, it's a little bit different. They're not all right on it. There's one that is closer to the black hole there. And I had one of the solo attempts where that actually bugged out and was like stuck in the black hole area and I couldn't shoot it, so that was fun. So don't be surprised if that happens to you. And then once that is done, it'll take a couple seconds for the gamma station to fall in, and it'll take like 30 seconds then for the dreadnought to spawn in. So you can sit around the Jupiter. You do get more marks for it having more health, but even if you get it back up to 100%, it remembers what its lowest HP was, and the marks are going to be based off of that, I believe. So as soon as the dreadnought comes in, basically the same as the first phase, get the Tachyon Net Drones console on it, and like I had explained earlier, the Zenkethi have that effect in that they can, if they're close together, they are very resilient, but that Tachyon Net Drones console just completely negates that effect. I did use Delayed Overload Cascade there, just to knock some of the smaller foes away. And then I used the Graviton Displacer to suck them back in and then hit another Delayed Overload Cascade to get more damage on them. And then, yeah, it's just a matter of focusing the Zentaur. It has like 8 million HP. So the plasma build I'm using obviously was able to get through that. But if you were doing this with like a Torp build EPG, so long as it's in the Tachyon Net Drones, you'd be able to take it out. Even like a Beam Overload build would be fine for this part, because it is the only enemy that needs to die here. The rest don't matter. So just focus the Zentaur, and it will go down. So the plasma part of the build is not necessary here. And I'll say that again here when I go over the build, but it's just whatever works for you to get that Zentaur and its 8 million HP down as fast as possible. So that was the strategy, and to recap, I'll put this sheet back up on the screen. But the key things that are absolutely essential to this strategy: the Tachyon Net Drones off that Bozeman Intel Heavy Frigate. If you don't have that ship from the C-Store, seriously, pick it up. Even if you're not doing solo runs, really good ship and accessories to have on hand. The Protomatter Field Projector from the Lucari Hokun or whatever in the Epic tab of the Phoenix Store. That is a really good NPC heal. So if you don't have that, that can help quite a bit for keeping the Jupiter alive here. If you're in a pug environment, you'll probably have someone sitting around the Jupiter, so you won't have to worry about healing it as much. But in a solo environment, I would say that the Protomatter Field Projector is going to be necessary, because there's nothing else out there that can provide that level of healing to an NPC in such a short duration. Because it's giving hull regen to them, it allows NPCs to get back up to 100% basically in its single activation of 20 seconds. And I think, yeah, that pretty much wraps up the strategy. So if there's anything I missed there, feel free to drop it down below and I'll try to get back to you. But let's head on over to the build now. And for the build side of things here, you really do have a lot of flexibility. You know, if you look back at the footage and the strategy stuff that I was just talking about, you don't technically need to fire your weapons for most of this run. Like, I think 10 or so minutes of it, you're basically just needing to focus on getting the particles, then getting them back to the Jupiter as fast as possible. So you really do have a lot of flexibility. You don't have to use the exact ship that I'm using. You don't have to do a plasma setup. The reason I'm using the Eagle with the plasma setup is because this is what I had set up already for a high survivability, high maneuverability escort for elite content. And I've been using this in a couple different variations now for the past several months. So you can use any ship that has high maneuverability, especially a pilot ship would be really good for this. And for the weapons, you could do phasers, you could do Tetrions, you could do a Torp build, you could do an EPG build, whatever works for you. You're not firing for most of the run. It's just the starting phase with that small group of Zenkethi that you have to take out. And then again at the end, you need to be able to take out the Zentaur as quick as possible. So many different ways that you could approach this. And as for the gear on this Terran Eagle, it's pretty similar for the weapons to what you guys have seen on most of my recent builds. So a bunch of the Viridian plasma cannons up front, and then a Maelstrom torpedo. All of them spec'd crit D damage on the Epic mod, and then damage for any remaining mods. For the aft weapon, it's just a Viridian turret. Normally I'd have the plasmatic biomatter turret on, but it doesn't really matter here. I don't even shoot the weapons that much. And then for the experimental weapon, it's the Plasma Incendiary Bombard from the Gorn Hunter. Does really well with a plasma build like this. And for the deflector engine core and shield, for the deflector here, it's the Elite Fleet Colony one, the intervention variant with the weapon specialization and shield pen stats on it. And you use this for the crit chance and severity it provides. For the engines, it's the Prevailing Innervated from the competitive reputation. These give you basically an evasive maneuvers when you hit any of your firing modes, and it is a pretty nice speed boost. I can show you that here. So when I hit like a beam overload here, you'll see that my movement stats shoot up and I do move a bit faster for a couple seconds. So it is truly a little evasive whenever you hit a firing mode, so pretty handy for an environment like Gravity Kills Elite where you do need to move faster. For the Warp Core and Shield, it's the Disco Rep 2-piece for the whole regen that has, the 120%. And for the devices, there's the Temporal Negotiator from the Delta Recruit for the cooldown reduction as needed, an energy amplifier to boost my weapons up when I'm shooting them, so pretty much during the first phase and then the final phase. Deuterium surplus, once you unlock these from a mission, I don't remember what the mission is, you can Google it, but once you have them unlocked, you can craft them from the engineering tab in the R&D window, and those are basically an evasive in a can. And then I had the flagship distress frequency transponder on. This is from a recent event here in 2023. Basically, when you hit fleet support, it will also summon in the flagship of your faction. So for me, that was a Scimitar. And I had the superior command frequency trait on. You get command frequency by having 30 points into command specialization on your character. And then the superior version of this trait is unlocked from one of the recruits. I think it's the TOS one. But basically, I was able to go in and call in a fleet support and the flagship of my faction every 5 minutes. I was calling those in around the Jupiter to give it a little bit of support, try to help it stay alive and clear out the enemies around it a little bit better. For the consoles, the Valkyrie Torment engine for the plasma buffs, the Sensor Phantom projector. This is a recent console off of the Cyclone Intel Escort. This is nice for the taunt that it has, but you can't really use it around the Jupiter because in order for this taunt to remain active to draw threat, you have to be right there facing the enemy. And as soon as you hit it and then turn around to run away from the Jupiter to get the next particle, it's going to deactivate. So It's only really useful when you're a bit more static and want to take threat off of yourself. So with the first phase, the final phase, and then maybe if you're trying to get threat off you when you're trying to get a particle, it can help you for a couple seconds. Engineering console wise, Shield Absorptor Frequency Generator. This is the console off of the T3 Valdor or the Legendary Valdor. And this is basically some shield healing when I am shooting my energy weapons, which isn't often in the run, but every now and then I would try to get a couple shots off just to heal my shields up a little bit. Lure Team Command. This is a really nice plasma buff for the plasma setup that I'm running. For the science console, I had Hull Image Refractors. This has a really nice passive effect on it that converts incoming heals that would put you above 100%. It turns it into temporary hit points because you can't go over 100%, obviously. So with the Fleet Colony TAC consoles that I was running, that's a really nice synergy and just helps to get a bit more survivability. Then I had DPRM, Tachyon Net Drones, which I talked about earlier in the strategy portion. That console is essential to getting the Zenkethi out as fast as possible during the first and final phases. The Protomatter Field Projector off of the Lucari Hokun in the Epic Phoenix tab. That is a lot of hull regen, and that's AoE, so it will work for NPCs. That's how I was able to heal the Jupiter up so well. Then the TAC consoles here, there's 4 of these Fleet Colony Protomatter consoles on. When you hit an energy firing mode, they have a chance to give you a heal for hull and shield. So with that Hull Image Refractors console I had up in the science slot, it's a really good synergy, like I was saying, and that was a nice bit of healing to just help me stay alive while I was trying to get the particles. And then the last console here is the Graviton Displacer. This is a really nice crowd control ability because it'll work even with low control stats and low aux power. This will basically grab anything around you and pull it up in front of you. I did also try using this to suck in a bunch of the enemies from near some of the stations to drive them into the black hole itself. I found mixed success with that, and I don't think I did that in the very final run, but that was something fun to do. The only thing with this console is make sure you don't reverse while it's active. If you reverse, it will shoot the enemies all behind you sometimes, which can be a bit messy. And as for the skill tree, it's my standard setup, which is over in the completed skill tree channel in the builds Discord. It's all the way at the top in that channel, and there's markings over there to indicate what the selections are that I have at the bottom. For the specializations, I was running Temporal Operative Primary. This was for continuity, so that if I did take a lot of damage, I would get that heal from it, which did end up helping me out in a couple of the runs that I was attempting. And for the secondary, it is Strategist. My idea was that I could just use the Placate on that as needed to try and get some threat off me, but I don't think I actually ended up needing to hit that too much in the run. Moving over to the stations here, I was running on the Commander TAC with Pilot. Beam Overload 1, that was for the Comp Engine proc. Clean Getaway, which is an unconventional systems trigger. Flyer Apart, which is a flight speed boost and also a damage boost. And then Cannon Scatter Volley 3, because I was running a cannon setup. For the Lieutenant Universal that I had set as an engineer, that was Emergency Power to Weapons 1 plus Aux to Sif 1. The Aux to Sif had an interaction with one of the DOFs I was running. Survivor Dejak here. This is from the Delta Operations expansion pack that I have. There is also a version of this that you can buy on the exchange, but it is typically a bit expensive. But basically, whenever I hit Aux to Sif, the next person to attack me is going to be placated for a couple seconds. So it's a good way to keep some threat off me. Then I had Emergency Powered Engines on the Ensign. For the Lieutenant Commander Universal with no spec, that was set to TAC and had Chemosite 1, Attack Pattern Beta 1, and then Torp Spread 3 for the Maelstrom. And for the Lieutenant Commander Universal with Command, I had a Science on there. Hazard Emitters 1 for the heal as needed. Photonic Officer for some cooldown reduction, and then Delayed Overload Cascade. This could have also been a Suppression Barrage 1, but the Zenkethi I found weren't doing that much damage to me. And I didn't think the Suppression Barrage would really last long enough to have too much of an impact over near the Jupiter. So I just went with Late Overload Cascade because when you hit that, if there is a ton of them grouped together, it'll shoot them all apart. So you can use that for some crowd control and some damage at some points. For the traits here, a good day to die, so I could hit Go Down Fighting at any HP level. Fragment of AI Tech for the control expertise and the energy weapon damage buff. Whole lot of X's. This is a really nice survivability trait. I talked about this in another video recently. This is still quite cheap on the exchange. There was some for like 6 mil earlier when I looked, so really nice. Basically, when you drop below 25% HP, it gives you a heal to bring you back up, but it can only happen once every 2 minutes. So if you want a survivability trait, get that while it's cheap. That was from the Prodigy lockbox. Intelligence Agent Attaché for the Captain ability cooldown reduction. Go Fast for the speed boost. Adaptive Offense for the crit boost. Self-modulating Fire for the shield pen. Kinetic Precision for the shield pen for the Maelstrom. Terran Targeting for the crit severity. Unconventional Systems for the cooldown for my universal consoles. And then the Boimler effect for some more cooldown reduction for bridge officer abilities. For the starship traits, Calm Before the Storm, which didn't really get a ton of use here, but that's some firing cycle haste and bridge officer cooldown reduction. Emergency weapon cycle for the firing cycle haste and minus weapon power cost. Complex plasma fires for the plasma synergy that has with all the plasma stuff that I was running. Then the Temporal Surge trait off the Bozeman Intel Heavy Frigate. This is a really nice maneuverability trait, and it also makes you untargetable for 10 seconds, gives you 100% crit chance. This is a clicky starship trait, so it's not just passively active the entire time. It is a clicky that goes on your tray, and it is really beneficial for a run like this. It helped me get out of some situations where I was feeling under a bit of pressure, helped me get back to the Jupiter real quick. I then had Cold Hearted on. Cold Hearted is debuff and some control effects to any foe that you hit when you hit pilot abilities or Ox to Bat. So being that this is a pilot ship, I had Clean Getaway on my spam bar for the uncon trigger that is. And that meant that when I was firing my weapons, I was benefiting from Cold Hearted. Withering Barrage, of course, because this was a CSV build. And then Superior Command Frequency for the reasons I talked about before, so that I could get the fleet support out to help cover the Jupiter a little bit. For the space reps, the crit severity one, the crit chance one, Tyler's Duality for more crit chance, advanced engines for the speed boost, and then energy refrequencer for the healing that provides. For the duty officers here, emergency con hologram is obviously quite important. Every time you hit immersive powered engines, this is going to reset the cooldown of evasive maneuvers. So very good when you need a lot of speed. Some crit doffs that honestly you could do this run without. Tyheth here for the debuff removal. So every time you hit the emergency powered subsystem ability, Tyheth or the Fed version, which is Keel, Keel apostrophe El. When you hit any of the emergency powered subsystem abilities, these basically always go off because it's a 40% chance. But the way that these are coded in the game is that there's four pulses of power over the first 2 seconds when you hit an emergency powered subsystem ability. So these effectively have 4 shots of 40% to remove debuffs off you. So pretty good. And then that Ox to Sif Placate Doff that I mentioned before. So, again, you don't really need the crit doffs here. You don't need the 27. They're nice to have, but I wasn't shooting my weapons for like 80% of the run. So, anything to buff damage was not needed for most of the run. it did help during the initial bit, of course, and then for taking the Zentaur out at the end. But yeah, I think that's everything with this build. Oh, and the endeavors, I guess. The endeavors for me are fully maxed out for space. So if you are trying to replicate this on a brand new account, factor in that you're missing those endeavor stats, which would help out. But overall, yeah, that's the build that I was running for that. It worked, but there definitely is several different options out there that you could do to effectively complete this content solo. Like I said, you don't have to do a plasma setup. You don't even have to do cannons. There's many different routes that you could take to complete this, so long as you have the speed to collect those particles fast enough, and the protomatter field projector to heal the Jupiter up at the later parts of the second and third and fourth phases. And that's going to be it for today. As always, thank you to all channel members and viewers for the continued support. See you guys around.